Alright, in this video we're going to be solving literal equations. Basically, that just means we're going to manipulate the mostly variable equations and solve for whatever variable they ask me for. In this case, we have a z here, so the goal is to get z by itself. And I'm going to use all of my normal equation solving rules to do this, meaning if I add, the opposite of add is subtract, divide is to multiply, the opposite of a square root is a squared, and so on and so forth. And the idea is we're going to get whatever variable they ask by itself. So in this first one here, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract this p from both sides. And then what I get is b minus p, and I'm just going to rewrite. That turns into a 0, and I got p times r times z. So you'll notice this is p times r times z, so I'm going to divide both by p and r at the same time. All right, and these two p's give me 1, these two r's give me 1, so all I have left is z equals b minus p over p r. And this is my newly solved equation for z. All right, and the next one I be slightly more complicated, and it's only complicated because we've got some kind of foreign variables that we haven't probably seen before, and that's the alpha right here, and then these are thetas, okay? But there's really nothing crazy about them. They're just variables. They just stand for unknown values. All right, we're going to solve for t2. And we're going to get that t2 by itself on the bottom. So the first thing I'm going to do is help get rid of the fraction. I've got t1 minus t2. I'm going to multiply. All right, I got t1 minus t2. Multiply this to the alpha over there. These two become a 1, and all you have left is theta minus theta 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and distribute that alpha out. And I'm going to get alpha t1 minus alpha t2. So now I made it a little easier to look at, meaning I don't have a fraction, so it's a little less complicated now. But now I'm going to try to isolate the t2 by subtracting the alpha t1 from each side. That gives me a 0, and I have minus alpha times t2 equals theta 1 minus theta 2 minus alpha t1. And then now I just divide by negative alpha, and that turns into a 1. So our final equation is going to be t2 equals theta 1 minus theta 2 minus alpha times t1 over negative alpha. Okay, so looks a little bit different, but we now just solved for t2. All right, here is another example here. We're going to solve for y, and as always, I'm going to have you pause this video, you try it for yourself, and then we'll come back and look at it. All right, now that you've had a chance to look at it, try it on your own. First thing I want you to notice, I have a square root on both sides, right? And that's the whole left side, and a square root on the entire right side over here. So what I can do is just square both sides. So if I square this entire side, and I square this entire side, the two square roots and these squared both undo each other and sort of cancel each other out, and I have x squared. The next thing I'm going to remember is I have y minus c times y minus c, right? Okay, make a little more room for us right here, so I got x squared. So now I've got y times y times negative c times y, negative c times negative c. And what that ends up giving you is I have plus y squared minus 2cy plus c squared, okay? So remember, you don't just take the squared and distribute it out to the y and the negative c. You have to actually distribute that out, all right? And I'm going to do something similar to the other side, but now it's a plus. I got y plus c. Don't forget you have to distribute all of that out here and here, and we end up getting something like this. I get y squared plus 2cy plus c squared. Now, here's what is nice, and here's what's pretty interesting for us. That becomes a 0. That becomes a 0. That becomes a 0. And that becomes a 0. So what I'm left with is something a little easier to work with, and that is x squared minus 2cy equals 2cy. Add 2cy to both sides. Those turn into a 0, and now you have x squared equals 4cy. And remember, I'm trying to get y by itself, so I divide by 4c divided by 4c. Those just turn into a 1 and a 1, and then I'm going to go up to the top here and write my answer. So I have y equals x squared divided by 4c. And that is my final solve for y answer. Now then, there's no way that I can even come close to showing you all the possible literal equations you can get. Hopefully this just helps remind you of a few things on how to possibly deal with fractions or square roots. And again, the idea is you use all of your normal equation solving rules and methods. You're just not going to get a final numerical answer. You're simply just going to rearrange the given equation to make it look slightly different because you're solving for a different variable. All right, again, hope this video helps, and I'll see you in the next one.